Okay, so our next panel, Europe as a Hub for Entrepreneurs, two very special guests for that. We've got Brigitte, yes, I've done that's my best job. Brigitte Zypries, Federal Minister of Economic Affairs and Energy with the Government of Germany, and Robbie Schingler, who is co-founder and Chief Strategic Officer with Planet. So some interesting points there. I'd like to start with you, Brigitte, if that's okay. If you could just tell us a little bit more about what you're doing in order to nurture entrepreneurs and space entrepreneurs within Germany and also across Europe.
Well, as a matter of fact, we don't do different things to space entrepreneurs compared to other entrepreneurs, whatever they do in the IT branch. So what we do is we, of course, have money we can give them, and we have certain programs where people can come and get money on the first stage and get certain help and get help with their business plans and all these type of things, and get money in the second phase after the seed phase, in the second one as well. So that's something. And the other thing is because I'm the coordinator of German aerospace policy since 3 years, or even more. I was very interested in these things, and I started in 2015 those startup nights in the ministry where we did what you do here. We had the same thing in 2015 in the ministry, and we had another one a few weeks ago, and we had one at the ILA, the International Messe, Fair in Schönefeld. And we are going to have another one, these kind of meetings exactly like you do here. We have startups pitching, we have investors coming, we have corporates coming and looking what happened. And first time it worked out, for instance, very well. We had this young startup doing things with cabin light, and they were right up took by Airbus up to the lab to Hamburg and now working there. So that worked out very well. And Tom Segert was attending this first time as well. So that's something we do. And of course, I do visit startups. I do have quite an intensive work with the Drone Masters. I don't know whether you've heard of them. It's not really space, but it's flying. It's dronen.
Close enough.
Yeah, drones, things. And besides what we do in the ministry, we of course support important initiatives for space startups of the European and German Space Agency. It's the ESA and the DLR. We have, for instance, we have Raumfahrt bewegt. That's established by the ministry and in cooperation with the DLR. The dialogue and the search for energies between the mobility branches provide a forum for space startups. It's mobility and space. We have the ESA EIP. It's something probably you can see outside because I've seen that there are certain stands of the ESA and DLR. And we have the ESA BIC. It's a ESA business incubator. We have in different parts in Germany, in Darmstadt and in Bavaria. And they help them to get along. So there are certain things you can ask for, you can go to, you can inform yourself, and you get contact.
Okay, brilliant. And Robbie, are you able to share with everyone a little bit about your story then?
Sure. So thanks for the organizers, actually, for putting this together. These community building activities are really what is necessary to build a movement and to help us cultivate and create a 21st century aerospace ecosystem. So it's wonderful to be here. And so my story, as you can probably tell from my funny accent, is that I'm from California. And I started Planet there after about 10 years working at NASA, so working in the government. And about 8 months ago, I moved to Europe. So I live in the Netherlands, and I come between the Netherlands and here in Berlin. And about a third of our team, a third of our workforce, is European. And this is due to the long heritage that we have with Rapid Eye, a German company to which we combined with about a year and a half ago. What we focus on here in Berlin in particular is mission operations. So we control the Rapid Eye satellites and all of the Dove spacecraft from here in Berlin, process the data, and do a lot of software development on top of our platform. And in short, what we have done at Planet is we build and mass manufacture small imaging satellites, and we operate the world's largest constellation of satellites in human history. And that happened about 3.5 weeks ago with a launch that we deployed 88 satellites into an operational sun-synchronous orbit. And with that, with the number of spacecraft that we have, we can image the entire world every day. Part of the reason why I have moved to Europe is because of the community here. It's because of the space policy that came out of Brussels last year and the programs that are associated with that space policy, and in particular around Copernicus and the downstream ecosystem. So the concept that the community here in Europe has is to cultivate a downstream ecosystem on top of Earth observation data. And there's no other place in the world that recognize this as an opportunity for startups and for economic growth. And that is part of the insight that we had when we started our company a number of years ago, was to cultivate the downstream ecosystem, to build a platform to allow for developers and startups to build contextual information feed powered applications on top of Earth observation data. And so we're delighted to be here, and this is where we are growing a lot on our development team, and looking to partner with a number of people here and with governments around how we create the 21st century aerospace ecosystem, and also how we stimulate the downstream ecosystem of Earth observation applications.
Well, that's, I think, a good point to pick up on. In terms of Europe, what do you think needs to be done, or maybe we're there already, to enable Europe to be a world-class hub for space entrepreneurs and to allow us to join in this new commercial space race? And that's to both of you. So, Brigitte, if you want to pick up.
Well, I can start. So this is relatively new, or I guess I should say, this is maybe the third wave of a lot of commercial space activities, right? The first one was when we as a global community were actually creating the aerospace community, and that was done with, in a very special time, with a lot of government initiatives and resources. And we invented an entire system and solved really hard engineering challenges and problems. And then it happened again in the 90s with a lot of investment that was put toward telecommunications. And then I would think that we're just beginning, or a couple of years into, the third wave of entrepreneurial space activities. And some things have changed this time that I think has decreased the barrier of entry. And first among that is access to space with secondary payloads, which is still the largest barrier of entry and largest barrier to innovation in the aerospace community, is getting access to space. And so much of that really came from universities. The CubeSat program was really an initiative for systems engineering for aerospace students to design and build and prototype a satellite in a semester. And that way of thinking about it was for a teaching and learning experience, but then a lot of really smart engineers recognized, well, we could actually go ahead and do useful science or a useful technology demonstration with these satellites. And so we're seeing that today. There are a number of companies that are coming up with new applications and new CONOPS of missions based on smaller satellites, and based on disaggregated sensor networks that were inconceivable before. And we're actually just beginning to see them get forward. In Europe, we have new investment funds that are coming. Seraphin in the UK, We have a lot of incubator programs that ESA is doing in partnerships with universities. And there are a number of activities that are actually undergoing, but I think we're at the beginning of it, to tell you the truth. And one of the things I would think is still a barrier is access to space. And so we see this actually with an RFI that is out for a Vega launcher next year, trying to solicit ideas and opportunities for people to get access to space. And you don't even have to pay for it. Now they ask you, can you pay for it? Because they're trying to think about coming up with the cluster mission. But that's a really innovative way of, again, trying to decrease the barrier of entry into space and allow for universities and startups to gain access to space.
Would you like to pick up on that?
Yeah. To gain access to space is the one thing, but I think that is easier these days than it used to be before, because we do have more small satellites, and it's always possible to put some small satellites in a rocket with bigger ones. So it's much easier to get them in the air, first of all. And the other thing is that we do have, well, I think space policy is also a question, what do you make out of the datas? And we have like the Sentinel datas, which is a European project, and they are open datas, everybody can use them, and you can find new business models with this data and decide yourself what you can do. And this is something, I totally agree what you said, that young people at the universities get the opportunity to figure out what could be the best. I mean, that's the way startups are founded. So that's their job to do this. And we in Germany, we have, for instance, a very strong focus on Earth observation and everything which has to do with this, and other things to, you can use the data for and put up new business models. The question of what you call new space in the US, that's different to Europe, because still, I mean, you say it seems, let me put it this way, it seems that it is all private driven. But I know that there is money from the government to the NASA and from the NASA to others to get this stuff going. So this is something we do it in a different way in Europe. We decided to build a new rocket, Ariane 6, and this is financed by the countries of the ESA. And I'm sure that's going to be a success as well as the smaller rockets we still launch are quite successful.
And what more do you think needs to be done to encourage space entrepreneurship within Europe? And how can the German government help within Germany and across Europe?
Well, I don't think it's a question of money, actually. I think it's a question of idea, of spirit, of I want to be part of it, something like that. And this is something which needs to be triggered. Movies like Hidden Figures, we can just see in the scene, is something which I hope motivates a lot of more girls to really study these one of these parts, subjects, and be part of the story. And other things we do, like we have in Berlin, we have the FEZ Wohlheide, where they have a space club, and kids from all over Germany come there for weekends and do space things, and they have a complete ISS. And they get certain tasks for the weekend and do that. And that's something, how to motivate young people to study these things and then work in them and probably find your own startup. But I don't think it's only a question of money.
Do you think it's more a cultural thing? Maybe in America you've got that entrepreneurial spirit, and in Europe we're a bit more conservative when it comes to taking risk?
Well, that's a general question of startups. Yeah, that's true. I mean, we in Germany especially, and in Europe at its whole, we have more. It's easier to find good paid jobs and attractive companies. You don't have to be an entrepreneur. You can easily find jobs. So that's probably one of the reasons, and the other one is a cultural thing. Yeah.
Why is it so important to have space entrepreneurs within Germany and within Europe? What difference will it make to the industry here?
Well, I think space has the highest requirements for material and development, and this is why I think it's important. I mean, we do profiteer a lot of the things which were developed for space in our automobile industry, for instance. And this is why we always say it's important, and the German government gives a lot of money in this part of industry.
And Robbie, what advice would you have for startups within Europe and how to succeed and to move forward from your experience?
Well, I think it's general advice for not just for Europe, but is to choose something that is a useful mission, right? Do something that has a North Star, that is inspiring, that is further out, that you can't do by yourself. That's one of the things that's so unique about our industry, is that you can't do it by yourself. It's not like a lone entrepreneur that's going to go and solve something. You need a team. And so one is have a North Star and come up with a mission that is worthy of a decade of your life, because if that's what you're really talking about, if you want to be an entrepreneur. And then two is to do it with people that you, may sound a little cheesy, but that you love, right? Because you're going to be spending so much time with these individuals to go through that journey, that do it with your friends, do it with people that complement your own skills, and also see the world a little bit differently. So have a North Star and do it with people that you love. And with respect to this kind of moment that we're in aerospace, which is going to be a decade or so, is to think about it as try to be commercial first rather than try to go after institutional money to start with. The barriers of entry are lower, and therefore if you come up with a really compelling mission and you have the right team to do it, then you will be able to find €1 million in order to prototype and get started. And to think about it from the end user and what the application actually is that you're working on. And then prove that success, and then you keep going, and then you iterate again. So have a North Star, get the right team, and really be commercial first.
Would you like to pick up on that at all? On what advice you would give to companies coming to Europe, and specifically Germany, in terms of how to build up their business and why it matters so much? Oh, it's okay. What advice would you give to companies who might want to come and to start up within Germany and Europe?
Well, that was a perfect advice, actually.
Repeat.
I wouldn't say anything else. There's somebody who wants to say something. Are you open already?
Yeah, we can open to questions now.
Thank you. And Robbie, it's a question for you. What do you wish from the German and maybe some other European government that they need to provide in order to build the basis for a thriving entrepreneurial space startup scene? Because we have the Minister of Economy next to you, so I think we should ask her some things that we'll need.
Do you need anything?
Yeah, what is it that you need? Yeah, that is a good question, and so thanks for giving the opportunity, I guess, for us to think about that, to put it on the spot.
And you've got to answer it in 4 minutes as well.
But I would think from a government standpoint is that you can be an end user of the product.
And what?
The end user of the product. So we are in aerospace are still used to the government being quote unquote the customer, right? Where the government sees industry as contractor base to build something based on the government requirements, which went through the procurement process, which was baked in for a long time. And that is important to still do those missions. Those are billion-dollar missions. Those take a long time. They're really hard technology, and they play a critical role in society. However, as we're beginning to become a little bit more commercial, is for the government and the investors would like this, but for the government to signal that they're going to be a customer, that they're going to have buying power. And so perhaps no government is doing this correctly, to tell you the truth. But that is the evolution of where we are in aerospace as we're becoming a little bit more commercial, is can the government have data buys for either technology demonstrations in space or new information feeds that they want to actually pull in and signal, again, to investors that there's going to be a customer. And that relationship then can be a commercial relationship rather than a contractor relationship. And those are two different things. And so perhaps that's what we can do, is think about other types of approaches toward buying commercial services rather than through a large tender process that takes a long time, because it's hard for a small company to actually win under those conditions.
Would you like to pick up on that at all?
Yeah, I guess you are right, but this is more a question for the Ministry of Defense, I guess. I would like to mention that we do that already. We take things which are developed and use it for our Katastrophenschutz. I don't know the English word for it, actually. Yeah. Also, if it's burning, for instance, you can find out if there is a Waldbrand. And see it from with this technology, and we use it for Katastrophenschutz as well and other things. So this is a way we are going, but I don't know how the Ministry of Defense is going it already with the Earth observation and other things. I guess they do it themselves, but there are different ways of using it, and like the Ministry of Interior and Landwirtschaft, and there are certain things where they still already buy it.
Okay, we've got very quickly, I'm just going to stop you there. Time for one last question. If someone could just put their hands up. Any questions? At the front.
When?
Yeah, at the front. Are we just...
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, Tom Segert from Berlin Space Technologies. Thank you for mentioning me. The question is to Robbie. What we've seen in the industry is a lot of, well, to put it in a figure, we see a lot of people who want to sell milk, and then the first thing is they start to breed cows. So your company itself was doing the same.
I told you that last night.
Yeah, exactly. so it's a very good analogy. So I want to put the picture to you. Is that something that prevails, or is that going to change? Will you be moving more towards the data products and be buying your satellites later on from satellite factories, or will you still keep everything in-house?
And a 30-second answer would be appreciated.
30 seconds.
Both of you, 30 seconds.
I think that the industry today is very different than it was when I started Planet in San Francisco, or I founded Planet in San Francisco 6 years ago. And the supplier base and the community is much more robust and much more mature than it was when we originally started. So I think that if I was starting Planet today, I would do it differently. And if you take a look at some of the new companies that are starting today, they are buying services from other organizations. Spire, for instance, went with Clyde Space, and so now they're spending a lot of time and they're in Scotland, right? ISI, they're doing their instrument, but they're actually buying components all over the place. For us, when we started our company, we innovated within the 3U CubeSat capability in order to get access to space. And being an Earth observation company, we had to be an X-band capability. And the smallest X-band radio at the time was European. It was a Surrey X-band radio, but it was the size of our satellite. So that would not have been possible. So we had to build it ourselves. And so now, unfortunately, or fortunately, we built up that capability in-house. But if there are people starting new systems today, find your niche around what that should be, and maybe necessarily actually purchase systems from other parts of the value chain.
And do you just want to pick up with the final word? Would you like to pick up with the final word with that?
No. Well, it was a question to him, and the answer was perfect, so there's nothing to say.
Okay, anything else you want to say? We're at the end of our panel.
No. I would like, all these women and men in the crowd here, if they are thinking of starting a business in Berlin or in Germany and have questions, just don't hesitate. Write an email to our ministry and we help you.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much.